one of the things, of course, is around men not talking. So, because I've experienced it myself. So I had depression in my 20s. I didn't tell anybody about it. In fact, one of my mates the other day only found out about it when he read about it in the Times because I was talking about it for an interview with this. He's my best mate.
Wow.
And men don't talk about it. And sadly, really, really, sadly, they will often take their problems to the grave rather than discuss them, and that's a common kind of thing in the suicide stories that we hear and that are common that, I didn't know, I never knew that he was feeling this way. So I think there's just this massive kind of stigmatization around talking about your mental health.
Welcome to the Mind Tech podcast, where we dive deep into the unsolved problems in mental health with the people building technology to solve them, including founders, investors, and experts in technology for the mind. I'm Manu, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Neil Smith, the co-founder and CEO of Mettle, the first mental health toolkit made just for men. Neil has co-founded Mettle with the legendary survivalist and adventurer Bear Grylls, with many more stars in their team. Their mission is to enable men to optimize their performance in all aspects of their life by creating a digital home for men's mental fitness. Mettle launched in November 2023, just a few weeks before our conversation, and the insights so far are fascinating. Neil explains why men need a mental fitness app made just for them, and how the masculine energy gives men permission to use the app without any stigma. Let's get into it. Welcome, Neil. It's an honor to have you on today because Mettle, your brainchild, the world's first mental fitness app made for men, has only just launched a few weeks ago. So it must be a very exciting time for you guys. After years of work and millions of pounds of fundraising, how does it feel to have finally launched?
Oh, thanks, Manu. Well, at the moment, it feels, pretty good, pretty chaotic. Everybody always says it's quite interesting. Excuse me. Everyone always says kind of, this is where the hard work really starts, once you've launched. And I'm like, really? Because we've been working pretty bloody hard up until now, and of course they're totally right. As soon as you've launched, you've got customers to serve, you've got kind of improvements to make, you're trying to find product market fit, etc. But overall we're delighted. It's great. The test for me, the reason I did this is to help men with mental fitness tools that otherwise they don't feel for them, to kind of give them the permission and the tools to look after their mental health or their mental fitness, as we're calling it. And, we're already getting great feedback from people. The other day we got an email from somebody who's in Hawaii who's just had open heart surgery and said, this is helping me with my recovery. And
wow,
it's just great. And, this
wonderful.
is only like a week or so after launch. So it's been great. Yeah. Thanks, Manu. Yeah. And it's good to join you today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm here in London, and it's actually daytime, but you can see it looks like nighttime. I've got the lights on in the hallway. It's kind of like it's a time of year that in Northern Europe when this app is certainly needed most. I would think it's a tough time. Yeah, so a good time to launch.
Definitely, yeah. That seasonal affective disorder affects everyone. Some obviously more than others, but it's more needed at this time of the year than ever. So I'm sure it will be making its impact. But you've said many things there that I want to get into. Sure. I just want to start though, before we dive into the problem you're working to solve and the solution you've created. I want to start with what initially inspired this journey of yours. Having worked your way to the top of TV as a producer of shows which are household names, The Apprentice, Grand Designs, The Undateables. You've been taking important subject matters and bringing them to a mainstream audience through TV for decades already. Right? And take, for example, The Undateables, a show which really changed the perception of how disabled people want to find love.
That's right.
Overlooked subject matter that you brought from the edges to the middle. And now you're taking an important, often overlooked subject matter, mental health, particularly for men, and bringing it to a mainstream audience. But this time, not through TV, but through an app. So my question to you is, did you first consider making a TV show to help men with their mental health? And why did you then decide to make an app instead?
Yeah. So okay. So Manu. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in what you say. So yeah, I was a TV producer. I used to used to run one of the largest production companies in the UK or the world, I guess, with massive shows like The Apprentice and Grand Designs. And but the shows that I was most passionate about were the ones that took important subject matters and made a difference. And the way that we did that, with a show like The Undateables, which we made at the first company that I ran. Rather than making a documentary about people with disabilities, which only a couple 100,000 people might have watched, then we decided to make a dating show, a factual entertainment dating show, which is dating is the biggest genre in the world, and by that fact, so everybody who liked dating shows turned up and watched it, and that turned out to be hundreds of millions of people, I think, probably have seen that show globally now. It ran for 20
Wow.
series, I think. More recently, I did a show around homelessness, but instead of kind of making a documentary, I'd just been working with a survival guy called Ed Stafford, who normally spends 60 days and 60 nights on a desert island with nothing but a camera. And excuse me, a bit kind of Qatari today. And I said, look, Ed, you're like ex-military, male, suffered severe mental health problems, adopted, all risk factors for ending up on the streets. Why don't we just do your 60 days and nights, but rather than on a desert island, we'll do it on the streets of London, Manchester, and Glasgow over a British winter. And that was Channel 4's biggest new series commission for 5 years, I think it was. And it brought a big audience to an important problem. So I've done quite a few of those shows actually over my time in TV, but the thing that I was most passionate about outside of television was the wellness space. So I was born with a disease of the nervous system called benign intention tremor, which made me shake really badly. And by the time I was like 12 years old, I couldn't get a teaspoon of sugar into a cup of tea, which was not a great look for a boy growing up in High Wycombe at the time.
Tough.
And my uncle, who also has the disease, it's hereditary, went to Harley Street and they said, look, there's no cure for this illness, but there's this thing called meditation, which we've heard of, which might help. And so I started meditating every day, and it helped me control my illness. And later on, I got into breath work, and which is a really quick way of transforming your physiological state, used by the elite athletes and the military. And in my 20s, I suffered from depression, and like a lot of men, I didn't tell anybody. And I was cured of that eventually by hypnosis. So, those things all feature heavily in my life, and I really wanted to kind of bring that into my kind of working life. My first idea was, okay, it was pre-COVID, and it was like, okay, look, there's all these kind of audio things out there, apps and stuff with meditation and breath work on them, but there's nothing online. There's nothing online. Could we kind of create a Netflix of the mind? In fact, I think, I was chatting to Michael Acton Smith about it, who runs Calm, who's a great guy. And, it's like, could we bring this content, into visual form? But then soon after COVID happened and everything went online anyway. So that sort of idea kind of, didn't become relevant. It wasn't relevant anymore because everybody, all the kind of yoga studios and stuff went online, and, people were posting a lot of content online. But over time, so I remained passionate about it. And I realized the trigger was, there's me. I'm using all these kind of things, these tools to keep my mental fitness in good shape. But when I spoke to my mates about it, kind of ordinary guys, keep themselves physically fit, successful, but talk to them about mental health or mental fitness or meditation, and they kind of stare into their pints and want to know what time the football's on. So I thought, okay, well, that's really interesting because, in TV, I love taking kind of taboo subjects and bringing them to a mainstream audience, as you say. And here are my mates, and they're not willing to engage in this yet. This is a really important subject matter. Is the way I could make it accessible for them. And I looked at the kind of bigger picture, the men's mental health picture overall, and as you know, it's kind of terrible figures. Suicide being the biggest killer of men under 50 now in the UK. Similar picture in the US, and it's getting worse from the research that we've seen. And the message is men need to talk, and that's correct. They do need to talk, but behaviour won't change overnight. I've become like I appear on podcasts now and talk about mental health, but I still don't particularly want to sit down the pub on a Friday night and talk to my mates about my mental health. Yeah, it takes a while. It's the right message. Men do need to talk, but it takes a while. And I thought, okay, well, could I do a similar trick to TV and give them something that doesn't require them to talk right now, but could help them take their kind of mental health into their own hands, their mental fitness into their own hands. And I thought about a TV show and thought about how that might work, but couldn't really come up with the right, I didn't see how we could make the right impact. And I just thought actually it needs to be something really practical that men can use on a daily basis by themselves. And so the obvious thing to do was try and create an app, which obviously was a little bit of a kind of a stretch for me, but that was my passion, and that's what I decided to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess TV shows and films, they go a long way in changing perception and stigma.
Yeah.
But here, you didn't just want to show something that people could watch and think, oh, okay, that's slightly changed my mind. You wanted to get in their life on a daily basis and give them the tools to really, invest in this on a daily basis themselves. So I can see why, you wanted something that's on their smartphone, for example, which gives them those tools so accessible. But why do you? Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say also, there was a massive gap in the market. So I was thinking, well, okay, men are in a mental health crisis, but there's no products for them. So it's kind of like that's something else you look at on TV. It's like, well, you try and come up with original ideas, because they're the ones that are going to punch through. And it's like, well, there's 20,000 wellness apps on the market, but virtually nothing for men. And yet they're demonstrably the people who need it most. So could we create the first kind of mental fitness toolkit for their minds, which gives, a series of tools that they can use on an everyday basis to improve their mental fitness?
Yeah. Why do you think men struggle so much with their mental health?
Well, that's a massive question, isn't it? Why they struggle so much with their mental health. And I always say I'm a TV producer. I'm not a doctor. It's kind of like so that's kind of my job is to try and give them the tools that we know from the evidence that work. But one of the things, of course, is around men not talking. So because I've experienced it myself. So I had depression in my 20s. I didn't tell anybody about it. In fact, one of my mates the other day only found out about it when he read about it in the Times because I was talking about it for an interview with this. He's my best mate.
Wow.
Men don't talk about it, and sadly, really, really, sadly, they will often take their problems to the grave rather than discuss them. And that's a common kind of thing in the suicide stories that we hear and that are common. That I didn't know, I never knew that he was feeling this way. So I think there's just this massive kind of stigmatization around talking about your mental health. There's also this thing where like my wife will say to me, so I'll go out with a mate and I'll come back and she'll say, oh, how's X's wife and the kids? I'm like, oh, don't know. So we've just been out with him. I said, oh, yeah, it didn't come up. And it's kind of like, we'll be talking about kind of other stuff, but not anything personal almost. You say, whereas women are much more communicative. And that's a big problem. And as I say, there's a message, which is men need to talk, because that will save their lives. It will save lives. But that's going to take a long time to change behaviour because we've been taught to be strong and tough and not to talk and to keep our emotions inside for millennia. And so I think that's kind of that's part of the problem. There's also a lot of kind of societal pressures on men at the moment. So man's role in society has changed, often correctly and rightly for the better through movements like Me Too and gender pay gap and equality. And these are important things and really positive. But on the flip side of that, a lot of men have thought, okay, where do I fit in? We hear young men who are struggling with consent issues or something, not knowing what they're supposed to be in society. And sadly, that gap of kind of that knowledge gap is slightly being filled by kind of toxic masculinity and stuff like that. And it's really important that we provide kind of positive role model and positive things for men to do. I mean, when we looked at why they're not using, so it's kind of like, well, okay, well, there are solutions on the market. There's other meditation apps and there's other hypnosis apps and breathwork apps. Although, we're one of the very few to put them all in one place. So I do feel we've got a USP across the board for that because we are a real toolkit. But when we interviewed a couple of hundred men, said, look, why aren't you using the tools that are available to you, which could help with your mental health? And it was like, well, they're too female. The answers that came back were too female, too hippie-ish, and there's nothing wrong with me. Yep. So all things that make men feel vulnerable, and men don't want to feel vulnerable. Yeah, it's that kind of, it makes them feel emasculated, which makes them feel weak, which is what they're taught over millennia they shouldn't be. So, so too female. Okay, men often don't want to go into space which they think is for women. So that's why we made Mettle just for men. And also the science, because we're working with Imperial College on this and been working with the NHS and with the co-founders of Movember as well. And the science shows that actually men respond much better to mental health interventions that are gender-based. So there's kind of real science to do that as well. Second objection was too hippie-ish. Yeah, I'm a bit of a hippie. I love a trip to India and, go and live with a yogi for a while, but men don't need that sort of stuff. Yeah, they want stuff that's not frightening in that way. And so, we're all science-backed, as I say. Every piece of content is checked by our clinical leads, so it's kind of reassuringly evidence-based. And also the guys that are providing the content on there are just straight-talking guys like my co-founder, Bear Grylls, the TV adventurer, and Paul McKenna, who's the world's most famous hypnotist, who's amazing. Dr. Alex George, who's the UK mental health ambassador, who's also really kind of big influencer. Chibsa Kerike, who provides all our meditation content, who's a real kind of bloke and absolutely amazing. And Jamie Clements, who again, is a football, rugby, ex-fintecher turned breathwork coach. So it's kind of like, it's about giving them kind of accessible content. And the third reason, there's nothing wrong with me. Well, men don't want to feel that there's anything wrong with them. So we're the last people to go to the doctors, So I can't remember the last time I went to the GP or anything, it's kind of like, if there's something wrong with me, I'll just struggle through it, same as a lot of people. And it's even worse with mental health. So men don't want to feel there's anything wrong with them. So that's why we're kind of branding the whole project as mental fitness, and all the tools in there are kind of aspirational, outcome based. So it's, it's all about kind of, getting better focus, having more energy, having confidence, and overcoming anxiety and stress as well, having better sleep. But, it's kind of really kind of outcome focused, which kind of men really respond to. And it's about improving your mettle. That's why we call it Mettle. And Mettle is spelled, it's METTLE rather than metal, the material. Mettle is literally a person's ability to cope with difficulties and overcome obstacles, and spirit and resilience. And that's kind of what we're trying to do within the app. So that kind of worked really well for us, that name. So sorry, that's quite a long-winded answer telling you about men's mental health, but that's kind of what we've found, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. No, it's all relevant for sure. I do feel like everything about Mettle is totally geared towards the average bloke, really. Not a man who typically is aware of their mental health needs, but one who actually isn't very aware of their mental health needs. Just like, you mentioned the bloke down the pub.
That's right.
So it's great that you've made something for them, but say you were sitting next to a bloke down at the pub and you were sharing a pint. What would be your elevator pitch to them for Mettle?
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. Just to touch on that point, we wanted to help the blokes as well as the wokes, as we say. So I'm a bit of a woke. I've been into this stuff for a very, very long time. but there's a lot of guys out there who aren't, and they need something. They're the ones who are struggling most in the mental health crisis. So I guess my pitch to them would be, we've built something which is like a mental fitness toolkit. Mental fitness is just the same as looking after your physical fitness. You can do it in a few minutes a day, and it helps you become happier, healthier, and more successful. And it's got products on there that are built for men and will, help you achieve peak performance in life while overcoming things like anxiety, stress, and helping you sleep better. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop, a toolkit, really easy. You can use it every day, a few minutes a day, and you'll feel better. So whether you're kind of struggling with kind of, difficulties in your life at the moment, or you're in good health, but you want to, get your mind in tip-top shape, then it's for you. So, we really tried to make something that is completely universal, that has both the painkillers and the vitamins in it, because there's that phrase in tech about, people buy painkillers, they don't buy vitamins, but, let's see if they buy both, because, obviously the painkillers, you might be struggling with stress or anxiety or sleep, and you can come to the app and find content really easily signposted there. But equally, you might just want to find, work on your confidence or your ability to, overcome wealth blocks, for example. We've got something in there. We've got a course on breath work for better sex and intimacy. It's kind of like aspirational content, focus, confidence, energy. Those are the kind of things that we want in their everyday life. We interviewed like over 1,000 of them, and I think the top 7 things that men wanted most were success, which is quite a male trait, but we've got stuff on there, and success, and what real wealth really means, in terms of health and family and everything else. Focus, confidence, energy, overcoming anxiety, stress, and sleep. And those were the things everybody told us they wanted, and that's kind of a mixture of the painkillers and the vitamins, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it doesn't just help someone go from feeling bad to good, but also good to great as well.
That's right.
Which so that's why you can proudly call it a one-stop shop, really.
Yeah.
So it's it's wonderful. I recall you saying at the beginning that men needed something that not only gave them tools but permission to take care of their mental health. I wondered, that's not something that I think, that's not insight that is often talked about, the fact that men need permission. So could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So the thing that so again, it comes back to the kind of TV shows example, so people might not want to watch a show on disability because it might make them feel uncomfortable, or watch a show on homelessness because it might make them feel uncomfortable. But if you make them really entertaining with people they like in them, then they'll watch them. Yeah, it's kind of like, because you give them the permission, they feel safe, coming to that content. And so, our kind of, it was a real founding principle that, what we're trying to do is give men the permission and tools to look after their mental fitness, because they need the permission. They need to be told, this is for you, guys. You aren't going to feel ashamed of doing this. You aren't going to be emasculated by doing this. You won't be made to feel vulnerable. This is something you can be proud of. So it is about giving men permission, because if they don't feel the space is for them, they don't feel they've got permission to enter it. And previously that was what was happening, and that's kind of why we went into the space. And as I say, we've only launched a couple of weeks, but already we're kind of getting people telling us, look, this is great, I've been waiting for this for so long, and I'm telling my mates about it. I want to tell all my mates about it because it's great, it really helps me every day, and it's cool. It's not shameful, if you see what I mean. I know that sounds kind of quite extreme, but I think that's what it's all about, really. It's giving people permission so they feel safe using it.
Definitely. It's always a great sign when people want to tell other people about the service. That's really the biggest unlock, I think, when it comes from, there's so much money that you could spend just getting people to use it, but you get that organic reach from word of mouth, that's when you've really found something that has real value. So that's
Absolutely.
a great sign.
Yeah, and obviously we need to do that because it's an expensive business running an
Yeah.
app and having loads of content and marketing it. And we have to charge for it, but we also need people to kind of spread the word. And that's kind of how all businesses effectively. You'll know it's the kind of phrase product market fit. It's kind of like when you've got product market fit, then people start telling each other about it, and it takes off. I mean, we're not there yet, but hopefully we'll get there soon.
Yeah, well, I think in your, I've read that you've done a lot of validation testing,
Yeah.
and in order to kind of have an idea of what product market fit may look like, which type of men were most receptive to metal in that testing?
Yeah. Well, again, it was we tested, we've because what's great about this, that kind of testing that you can do now on social media is it can be very targeted. And so our initial validation, we tested, the blokes and the wokes, I guess, were the two that we divided it into. So it's kind of like, okay, out of the group of men who are already using products like this, how many would be interested in coming to one that is specifically built for men? And then out of guys who don't do anything like this, how many would be interested from them? So we went to the kind of football sites, the rugby sites, a lot of sports kind of stuff. Magaluf weekenders, I think we kind of advertised around. It's kind of like, guys from kind of 25 to 55 mainly. And what was striking is that the blokes, if you like, tested slightly better than the wokes, which we were really encouraged by. Wow. So, which really showed us that there was a desire for a product like this for men. They do want to take care of their mental health, their mental fitness, as we're calling it. And so, it's worth doing, because you have to kind of have that validation, I guess, before you start on a path of fundraising and, in my case, changing my entire life to do this, giving up a successful career in television to kind of, start again as a founder, a startup founder. So, yeah.
Wonderful. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because in the testing, I guess the ideal outcome would be, everyone loves it, even the blokes and the women. Everyone loves it. Everyone's going to use it. But the fact that the blokes actually liked it more than the wokes, and the blokes are the ones who are more underserved and often struggle to cope with mental health issues, I think that really does indicate you're finding product market fit there, which is a great sign that you had this hunch that something like this would be needed, and that testing, hopefully that continues in the real world as it already has.
So I think that it would be fair to say that secretly most blokes, if you like, and I do include, I'm a bloke and a woke, I would say.
Yeah.
A bit of both, but most blokes will have kind of stuff that they know is a bit of an issue in their life, whether it's kind of anger issues, because obviously anger traditionally has been seen as the only acceptable kind of emotion for a man to show, almost, and it's kind of where a lot of men let their emotions out, is through anger, because they haven't been given permission to express them in other ways. So they might be angry, or they might be, burning the candle a little bit too brightly at both ends, or their sleep hygiene is poor, or they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, and they'll have those things going on in their life, but they won't tell anybody about it, or they're interested in, like a lot of blokes, getting into top shape, peak performance. So I think there's a kind of huge, as I say, I thought your phraseology was really good about, it's not just from going from bad to good, it's, good to great as well.
Yeah.
But, we've all got an inner life. And it turns out that blokes want to kind of, improve on that as much as anyone else, I guess,
Yeah, I think also the name Mettle, of course, you explain the difference between your metal and the material metal, but there is a reason why those words are so similar, right? Because
Yes.
the material metal is a hard,
Yeah. That's,
object, which itself does bring a sense of fortitude and resilience.
yes.
Um, and I was wondering, choosing the name metal,
Mm.
on one hand, it really does meet men where they are. Instead of trying to drag them to somewhere they are uncomfortable going, right? Somewhere that's softer.
Mm.
But um, do you think the name metal, which does indicate something hard, not somewhere where you'll be treated with softness, it doesn't really quite give the sense of somewhere that you're going to receive a hug, but somewhere that you're coming to develop strength and growth, and
Yeah.
let's get into it, just to make sure that men are as strong as they can be when a storm does come, which obviously
Yeah.
they do come.
Yes.
Um, but you know, giving that sense of strength over kind of weakness, you could say.
Mm.
Why do you think that's like the best approach here? Like choosing mental strength rather than what people traditionally consider to be mental health?
So that's a really good question. So I think we've got a problem with how we define those terms. Yeah.
Mm,
So if I said I've got physical health, yeah, wouldn't mean that I've got a broken leg or cancer or heart disease. If I say I've got mental health, then people immediately think, okay, you've got a mental health problem. Yeah. You've got, anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder, or, it's kind of like we associate mental health with being something that's bad. Yeah.
mm,
And we associate physical health with being something that's good. And so you've got these,
mm,
if I'm, physical health is kind of, I'm physically healthy. And it's like mental health, you immediately think of the kind of negative. And that's odd and not right and not helpful, I would say.
mm-hmm.
Not helpful in the battle to give people better mental health, because it increases those stigmas, doesn't it? Because if you're looking after your mental health, there must be something wrong with you. Yeah. Whereas if
Mm,
you're looking after your physical health, that's just sensible. So it's
yes,
kind of like, okay, well, how can that's why we call it mental fitness rather than mental health, because you look after your physical fitness, look after your mental fitness as well. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
positive thing. And I think, developing mental strength, what we've found through our research is, in fact, the first big study that we know of was done in Australia by our partners at Imperial College with Movember, who, Professor Rafa Calvo, who co-designed the app with us, had the same realization as me, that, there's a male mental health crisis, that there's lots of products out there, but men don't use the tools that are available to them that could help them with it. And him and Movember teamed up, and they ran a full-scale randomized control trial in Australia and released an app called Headgear, which kind of had a meditation challenge on it, a 30-day challenge. So it's gamified like our product as well. And, they got it out to the outback Australian firefighters and ambulance drivers, pretty kind of tough, unreconstructed guys, And the results were great. So the control group compared to the test group had a significantly increased or decreased incidence of anxiety and depression compared to the test group over a sustained period of time. So it's a successful trial. Now, they didn't kind of then go on to kind of launch the app globally. It's kind of took us to come along and say, okay, well, let's build on that.
mm-hmm.
But, it's about reframing things, I think. So, having mental strength, mental fitness, if you like, we're not trying to cure illnesses. I mean, that's really important that we kind of, we're not a replacement for a doctor. If people do have serious anxiety, depression, or any other mental health kind of problems, then they should seek professional help. And we say that, and actually in our app, we guide people to places where they can go for help as well, which other apps don't seem to do. So we're really pleased to be able to do that. But the evidence shows that if people work on their mental fitness, then as a group, overall, they're likely, that group will experience less mental health problems than a group that doesn't use those tools. So it's kind of like, if you work on your mental fitness, then you're less likely to develop mental health issues, is what the evidence shows. So,
Yep.
there's a really good argument for developing your mental fitness when you're well. So it's not, as you say, it's not about being unwell and coming to the app, although, that should help, along with, working with a doctor. But, that's not what we're about. We're about helping people improve their mental fitness and their mental strength overall. And so the word Mettle, and also Bear Grylls, who's my co-founder, as I say, he and I made TV shows for the past decade together, and he's all about mental strength, resilience, fortitude, never giving up, positive mindset. And those things are incredibly useful. So although, and we like the fact that it sounds like metal, and it is quite masculine and a little bit hard, but but it's more about building those tools, building those those strengths, that ability to persevere, and but ultimately it's about feeling happier, I guess. So it's which is perhaps not the most metallic kind of word, but if you have better mental fitness, you're going to feel better every day. So you're going to have better relationships. You perform better at work. You're going to be happier, more relaxed, sleep better. So it's kind of mental fitness is super important and weirdly overlooked. It's something that I think changed generationally. So I always say the idea of my dad going to the gym is laughable. You would never think of going to a gym, when he was sort of my age or something. But my generation will look after their physical health, but we don't look after our mental health very well. And my son's generation will be different. He's 10 years old, and he already understands about mental health and looking after your mental fitness and important it is. It's a generational thing as well. And I think we're on a tipping point. But sadly, we've reached that tipping point by getting into a very bad situation with male mental health. That's kind of where we are, and things have to change, and they are changing. So Dr. Alex George, who is another one of our partners, he sort of made it big by being a contestant on Love Island and being a very sensitive man on Love Island, and A&E doctor by trade, whose brother very sadly took his own life, and he decided to dedicate his life to mental health awareness, and he's now the UK government mental health ambassador, and he's working with the UK government to put in place all sorts of things, to improve on mental health outcomes. And one of those things is trying to make it, a key part of the curriculum in schools, how to look after mental health. So, generationally, we've got cause for hope. It's just that at the moment, men particularly are in a particularly difficult place and finding it hard to get out of. So, we want to help with that.
Absolutely. Well said. That reframing from mental health to mental strength sort of sidesteps that stigma that has been causing men to suffer in silence for so long. I wrote an article on my weekly email list, Mind Explored, where I proposed changing the name of mental health to mind health for a similar reason, because my take on it was the word mental is associated with so many negative things, right? You think of someone who's genuinely crazy, and perhaps changing that could sidestep the stigma there. But I guess what you've done is you've actually said, no, we're not, a health and illness thing. We are a strength thing too, and we're going to focus on the side of that we're a fitness thing, and we're going to focus on the side of things that prevent illness by being strong, which is definitely needed and really does come through in the app. Before we get onto the app, I just thought, have you considered the flip side of having a name like Mettle? Because I guess the flip side is that some would argue the reason men struggle with opening up and about what's going on in their mind is because they feel they need to be strong rather than soft and vulnerable. So how do you and your team at Mettle make sure that, as well as developing mental strength, men also feel strong enough to feel vulnerable and soft sometimes too, because it is needed as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good question. What we're doing is, we're not asking men to open up right at the beginning, because there's lots of places that are asking men to open up and be vulnerable. What we're asking them to do is look after their mental fitness. Yeah,
Yep.
which we know will help them with their mental health all because all the science says that.
Yep.
Yeah, and so therefore we can help prevent people crossing that line. So when one of the reasons we've been working with the Maudsley, who are biggest mental health institution in the world, part of the NHS. One of the reasons they really like it is they're like, look, there's a line, there's kind of severe mental health there, mental illness there, and there's really good mental health here, and you can get people here and try and get them more like that. But equally, if they get into trouble, you can signpost them back. But you can be a preventative measure. However, so I think Mettle, is a good name, even though it's associated with metal. Also, you have to remember that people kind of forget the meaning of names once they start to come into common use. They become just a brand, like Google, I guess, or Apple. Yeah. We don't think of apples when we use an Apple Mac, but equally, what we're doing is we're starting with these mental fitness tools, which don't require men to talk, and they can be proud of using down the pub, and they're already talking to their mates about it. But our next step is to kind of create community, and that's where, so our V2, if you like, our next step on our journey is to try and create a community. And that's where we will invite men to be more vulnerable and share more. But in the first instance, we just wanted to get the tools out there, which we know through the evidence will have a positive effect on their mental health. And then, the next step will be to try and create a community. And let's say they're using those tools and they feel safe in this space. We're going to create a safe space. Then there's room for that vulnerability to grow. And there is an argument to say that being vulnerable is being strong. So being soft is being strong. Because it's hard. Yeah, it's kind of harder than being tough for a lot of men. And that's the problem. So it's kind of it's an interesting question. But I think that's our kind of our take on it. We wanted a masculine name, and the first steps, as I say, a toolkit of practical tools that people can use, and the second step is to try and create a community whereby men can start opening up. But it's kind of one step at a time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the past couple of weeks, I've actually really enjoyed using the app myself, and I've been boosting my mental fitness score with every exercise that I do, which is great to see that progress. But above all else, on your point, Mettle really does give me the sense that it is tailored to men, no doubt about it, in its style, in the language used by all of the coaches, in the examples that are given. Think of being a dad or that kind of thing, or at work, and it's also relatable to being a man. You can tell that's really optimized for that, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I've got here my scores as well, which I'm enjoying. The app includes many of the elements that you've, of course, incorporated into your own mental fitness regime over many, many years. Meditation, breath work, building healthy habits, hacking your mind with hypnosis. Of course, you've tested all of that clinical validities there through academia and clinical research. So it's all clinically valid. And you mentioned the community aspect, because that was one element that I'm really excited about. It's something that, at the moment it says it's, of course, like coming soon. And I wanted your thoughts on how important do you think the community aspect of the app will be, and how do you envision that will work through an app?
Yeah. So I love classic cars. Yeah, I love them. Can't afford any at the moment because I'm doing this, but one day I'll have a whole collection of wonderful classic cars, but I love them. I'm obsessed by them. And there's a classic car forum called Piston Heads, where you can buy cars and stuff, and they have lots of people chatting. And I think, and it's chatting about cars. But one day, I think somebody put up a subject matter of, I'm going to be a new dad, any advice? And it became, from that post, like, an important place where men could safely open up. Now, Piston Heads, just going back to your metal point, that's a tough, masculine, it's about cars, do you know what I mean? It's manly.
Yeah.
But because there was nowhere else, for men to kind of talk. And there's a lot of great men's clubs now, which do a brilliant job, I should say, but they've only sprung up in the last few years, I think. That became like a community, a forum where men could kind of safely talk. So I think it's within the app, it's about exploring safe forums, by which we mean forums where, social media allows, sort of trolling and, unpleasant responses and negative kind of behaviors. So it's about a moderated community to start with, I think. So something that people do have a voice and they feel part of Mettle and they're helping build something and helping others. But again, it's a safe space. So it's all about us creating something that is safe for people, where they're not going to, if they say something, they're not going to get, negative responses and stuff, which can obviously happen in social media and is a massive problem with our kids, and that's what we really want to avoid. So that's kind of what it looks like in the first instance, I think. Ultimately, we want to be synonymous with men's mental fitness. There's not really people out there trying to do what we're doing at the moment. I'm sure there will be soon, there's an opportunity to kind of stand for something, which is kind of looking after your mental fitness and, and men being positive and well. And I think that's when, Mettle moves from being a brand or a product to a community, I think,
Wonderful. Yeah. Somewhere where I could envision myself asking advice on men's issues and having people respond out of genuine, from a place where the intention is all about, we're here for each other kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to do it in the app, because there's an argument that you could do it outside the app and that might drive more people to the app and might be more commercial for us, But I think if you're in the app, you're already there. You're already, you're part of the club. Yep. You are already feeling good about looking after your mental fitness. So you want to help others. I think that's quite an important part of it.
Yeah, and giving that impression of a safe space where people have the permission to come and it doesn't feel like they're putting themselves out there. It feels very natural because of that. I think also, as you alluded to before, one of the other ways you do this is with your star-studded lineup. With your wonderfully well-known celebrities who are known for their voice on mental strength and mental wellness. Of course, the star-studded lineup includes Bear Grylls, the legendary survivalist and adventurer into the wild, who, as your co-founder, and after using the app, he essentially personifies Mettle, right? And that really comes through, and it's nice to be able to have that sort of guide. And of course, you have guides in various domains. Paul McKenna, the hypnosis expert, as you mentioned, leading the mind hacking aspect, and Dr. Alex George. Being on Love Island is probably the most effective way of becoming mainstream, right? And for you to have him on board, who is so engaged with improving mental health and bringing that to the forefront of our minds right from the start of our education in schools, that is a wonderful asset to really appeal to the mainstream audience. How much of a role do you think having these well-known people will play in capturing the attention of the male audience, not just at the beginning, but ongoing?
Well, so let's take them all separately. So, Bear was the first person I spoke to about this. He's an interesting character because I guess he does personify metal because, he's outwardly seen as tough. He's a tough guy on TV doing these adventures. But if you ever hear him speak, he's very humble and talks about his vulnerability. And if you ever see him on a podcast, we did Louis Theroux recently, he's he talks about failure. He's all about mental strength and resilience and never giving up. He's gone through huge personal struggles like breaking his back when he fell out of his parachute failed after jumping out of a plane, but then went on to be one of the youngest people ever to climb Everest using, the power of mental strength. And, like he had a postcard of Everest at the foot of his hospital bed, I think, and just envisioned himself, climbing there. And then eventually he got there. So he kind of, and he's the worldwide leader of the Scouts, which I think is a movement of 55 million people who are there to kind of, have positive adventures and support each other and bring positive values in the world. So I think Bear is really, really helpful and very much embodies the kind of mission. And is happy to be out there and be vulnerable publicly. Like a lot of sports people, actually, now you're seeing that in sportsmen as well. People who you associate with being strong and successful, saying, "Well, look, I've struggled here, and I've had my own battles, etc." You see that a lot now, which is great. And having Bear is brilliant because you can amplify things around the world, which is great, and help kind of unlock doors to interesting people as well. Alex, again, brilliant. He's just sort of an absolute grassroots, mental health campaigner and ambassador, and he's in there with the government, with the NHS, with big business, trying to make a difference. And so this is his passion, but equally he's brilliant on social media. I'm terrible at social media. He's an absolute expert. So he speaks kind of a different part of the population. So he's great, and he's like 100% behind this. He's he's a significant investor as well. I'm just going to let my dog in, otherwise he's going to back down the door.
Please do.
Apologies.
That's right. What a beautiful dog.
Yeah. We're wanting it out again in a minute, but otherwise we'll just keep hammering at the door. So yeah, he's brilliant. Paul McKenna, I met him and I told him what I was doing. He just absolutely loved it. And he's obviously, he's helped more people than, there you go. He's let himself out this time. He's helped more people with hypnosis and self-hypnosis than anybody in history. So his books have sold, countless millions globally. And, so it made sense to have the best person in the world doing it, and also he's a kind of, really straight talking guy and wants to help men. But also, our less well known contributors, our coaches. So Jamie Clements, again, he worked in fintech. He kind of felt a lot of pressure on him to kind of perform well in that kind of world. Rugby player, football player, but it was, it wasn't for him. So he's been through his own kind of, rebirth into the kind of world of breathwork. But he knows that's a really, really useful tool for men, and he's kind of, really kind of leading light in that area. And Chibs Akereke is just brilliant. He's absolutely fantastic. He's kind of like, he's in his own words, he says, "I'm a 6'7" black man from a council estate in London. When I talk, people tend to listen." Which I think is kind of, he's kind of like, okay, yeah, he's kind of like, you got a lot of respect for him. He's an imposing guy. He's got an amazing voice, and he kind of he can really communicate with men, just make them feel really comfortable, and I think that's really, really important. So he and Jamie and Paul, who are kind of core content providers, are really on the money with that. So
Yeah.
I feel really happy with them. And that was, after a long and wide search. Paul was a no-brainer, but it took me a while to find Jamie and Chibs.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Chibs, I've been listening a lot to his meditation sessions,
hmm,
and they are very unique. I don't think you can find meditation sessions like that on any other app, to be honest, because um, he is just about the most masculine person you can probably imagine.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
um, mental health needs to have that flavor to it, or,
that's right.
mental strength, or just tending to the needs of one's mind. Um, when you have someone who's that masculine,
Hmm,
like doing it,
yeah,
it makes men think, yeah, well, I can do it too. Then
that's,
there's nothing about me that could possibly feel emasculated when I'm listening to this person
that's right. That's
explain
exactly
how to
right.
breathe, right? So perfect in terms of really making it as easy as possible for men who like being masculine,
Yeah,
taking care of their mind, and that's exactly what
absolutely.
he needs to do.
So that's the feedback we've had.
Hmm.
Meditation was always going to be the hard one to crack in a way.
Hmm.
Like self hypnosis, okay, mind hacking, yeah, that's kind of hypnosis and NLP. It's kind of like mind hacking. Great, let's give it a go. Let's hack my mind to be better.
Yeah.
Breath work, Navy SEALs use it. It's kind of like elite athletes use it. Meditation's a bit more difficult and can make people feel emasculated. But when Chibs is doing it, that's not going to be possible, as you
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
Uh, However, we want it to be inclusive. It's for all men, and so the tone of voice that we've used is not exclusive. We kind of, it's not kind of just for one section of society. It's not laddie. It's
Hmm.
not sweary. It's we've made it very carefully to appeal to a broader an audience as possible. Because obviously
Yeah.
talking about men is a very wide spectrum. Um, but it's great that you've responded well to that. Yeah, yeah, and it's good. And
Hmm.
it's helping people get into new things that they wouldn't have otherwise tried, which is amazing. And that's kind of what it's all
Yeah.
about.
I think it was easy for me to identify that because I have tried quite a few different ways of meditating, different guided meditation apps, and so it was immediately apparent to me that this is something that is not offered like elsewhere in terms of the masculine energy it really brings
Yeah.
to everything it does, which is perfect for its cause. So yeah, I can see that being a great fit. There's a lot here that's working well for you in terms of the personalities, giving it that vibe that it needs to have in order
Mm.
to pull men towards it. But in your journey,
Mm.
have you experienced any significant obstacles?
Yeah. So, uh, and what's been interesting about it, I guess, is that what I wanted to build a product that would help men overcome obstacles. Yeah. So that's kind
Hmm.
of that's the idea.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what's been brilliant is that there's obstacles every day. Yeah. So launching an app, you get a moment of high, and then it's like, holy shit, there's a lot to do, man. And we're
Yeah,
spending
yeah.
money, and we've got to get like a big audience, and we've got to do all the press, and it's kind of like, and we've got to bring new features and launch the Android version, which we have now, which is great.
Hmm.
There's constant obstacles. Yeah, that's what being a startup is. And what's been
Hmm.
great, and this sounds like an advert, but it isn't. It's kind of like I've been getting up every day and using Metal, and it's been helping me. So a important thing about it is routines,
Hmm.
and if you can start a bit of a routine, habit stacking is a really good way to go. Just give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, whatever. Let's say you get up in the morning cleaning your teeth. We'll do it just before or just after, and allow 15 minutes to do it, and then it becomes part of your routine. I
Yeah.
wake in the morning, I'm like, oh God, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to, sort this out. And I go to Metal and I do, 3 exercises, and then I'm kind of feeling good again. Yeah. And I'm ready
Hmm.
to kind of
Hmm.
face the day. So it is helping me over. So that's, I wanted to build a product that I would want to use, because also I had a bit of a pain point as a founder in that I wasn't sticking with any of the products on the market. So I wanted to build something for myself, which is often advice that they say in tech, isn't it? The founder should build something that answers their own pain points, and that's what I tried to do. So, so it has helped, which is brilliant, which is my own personal validation, I guess. In terms of kind of more kind of, business focused obstacles, it's been fundraising, I guess, so fundraising in tech took a real nosedive, I like to say the least. Right as we started. Yeah, so there was a big kind of tech crash, or whatever you would call it, tech crunch, whatever they call it. And, all the funding kind of seemed to dry up. And that was an obstacle because we couldn't raise money like instantly. And it turned out to be absolutely brilliant and worked massively in our favor, because it turned out that it took a little bit longer to fundraise. Still not a huge amount of time, well under a year. And but the people who came on board weren't just speculators who were trying to find the next big tech thing. They were people who really cared about what we were doing. So we've got like an amazing community of angel investors who are literally incredible, who all believe in what we're trying to achieve and have a vested interest in it, not just financially, but, personally, more often than not. And that's also, so I guess, what could have been our biggest obstacle was our biggest opportunity, I guess. So
that's the way to, that's the mindset you have to take, really. And it's great that that's the one that you are, as a CEO of a company that, has to embody that mindset of the obstacle is the way, and finding the opportunity in them. It's wonderful how the fundraising has worked out for you in that sense. And I think when you're dealing with something like mental health, obviously the financial gain appeals to the minds, but it's a topic that appeals to the hearts of so many people. And it's brilliant to hear that the people invested in this connect with it in that way, because that's what makes it more meaningful as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and those investors have become advisors, and they've helped us, and people feeling engaged. So, we're this has to become a movement, in my opinion, like a community or a movement, and people, our investors, hopefully feel that they are part of that movement of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Which is not just a bigger movement around getting men mentally fit. Yeah.
It's a cause that goes beyond a problem, really, which is a great. It's an honor to be able to dedicate your life to something like that. So
it is, and I think that on that cause thing, I think that's also why we've got such a strong team. So obviously you've seen all the people who are on the app and involved in it, but behind the scenes we've got like just a phenomenal team. And it's hard when you're a startup because you have to give up so much, mainly money, in return for a lot of time and hard work and uncertainty. And it's like, well, why would you do that? Some people do it for money. I'm not motivated by money myself in that way. But, you don't know whether you're going to make any money. That's the fact of startup life. Not most of them don't work. Yeah. And so having a mission, a cause, something that you all believe in means that everybody wants to do it because they believe they're putting something good into the world. They're trying to solve a problem in the world. And they know that if this works, then they'll have helped many people, including their own families. And, our core belief is that even though this is a product for men, it's for everyone, really, because, if you have better men, you have a better world, you have a better society, Like men have mothers, daughters, wives, girlfriends, they're sisters, like men have an impact beyond their own selves, which is abundantly clear from looking at society. Yeah. So if we get better men, we get a better society. So it's kind of, and there's women on our team as well as men, and that's really important. So
Absolutely.
I think having that cause does help you overcome the obstacles which naturally are a part of having a startup, which are, as I say, taking financial hits, and working really hard with no promise of success.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reality for any startup. You know.
Yeah. Well, with great risk comes the opportunity for great reward. So
Absolutely.
it's a brave but worthy cause. And hearing you talk about unifying your team and everyone behind this on this same mission and
Mm.
on this ship together towards this vision for how men can approach the needs of their mind. Um, that brings me to the question of like, what do you see as your responsibility as
Mm.
the CEO, as well as this core, leading people and getting them on board this cause? What else is your responsibility as CEO at Mettle?
Yeah. So I see my responsibility is, like you say, leading people. Yeah. So I
Hmm.
have to have a leadership role. I'm comfortable in leadership roles. I love leadership roles. I've been leading companies for a long time now, and I really enjoy it. You know, I've been successful, and people tend to like working with me because I've got a style which is very inclusive and, try not to be hierarchical and empower people to get on with their work, but equally expect the best from them.
Mm.
So that's part of it, and that's a wonderful kind of, micro. Uh, you know, so I used to say in TV, there's kind of the micro and the macro. So you get pleasure from running a company, which is the kind of micro, but the macro is you've got the potential to go out in the world and spread a huge message.
Hmm.
So the micro with us is our company, and leading that company and trying to make a company built. But the pleasure of building a company from scratch and then walking in the office and seeing 5 people there. All right, we're small at the moment, but that it's like, okay, well, we've built this and we're on our way is enormous. But equally, what we can do in the world, the kind of macro, is massive. The opportunity, and so I guess as a CEO, it's my job to lead the company to make sure it remains solvent and that we don't get into kind of any trouble with my COO, but also to spread the word of Mettle, around the world and help build the contacts and the networks that we need to kind of really make a dent in this hugely important area. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like it's building externally and building internally. I guess is my responsibility as well as fundraising.
Yeah, keeping the cash flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Now this has been absolutely amazing. I just have one more question
Yeah.
um, before we bring things to a close. What are you working on right now that excites you the most?
Hmm. Well, I mean, what we're working on right now is just improving the app.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what we're working on right now that excites me the most is the idea that we've recently launched and the product is good. It was ready for market, but now the exciting thing is the feedback that we're getting from people who are really using it. So we're speaking to users on a regular basis now, regular calls, and getting feedback through our website and through the app.
Mm.
And the exciting thing is making those improvements so we can get to a product that people absolutely love. So it's kind of that's although that's not a bit long-term goal, it's a kind of medium-term goal, I guess. But it's an ongoing thing that the
Mm.
companies obviously continue to do throughout the life of their growth. If they are to grow, they will constantly need to improve and respond to the market, and the market changes. And so that is really exciting for us. So getting that user feedback, getting it into the wild, to
Yeah.
use Bear Grylls' term,
Yeah.
and
Real world testing now.
real world testing. Yeah, so we did loads of
Mm.
testing before, but until that product is built and out there,
Yeah.
you really don't know. And people have responded well, but we know there's improvements and
Mm.
it's exciting. So like in an hour, we've got a big session to kind of go through some of that feedback and look at what
Wonderful.
improvement we can make straight away.
What is some of the or what's one of the most insightful pieces of feedback you've already gained?
Um, that's a good question. So, that's a good question. I mean, they're quite prosaic in a way. It's kind of things
Mm.
like like people saying, actually, that search function, you need to do this with it, or the people are grayed out at the moment, they need to be in color and then go gray when just things that
Okay.
it's kind
Design
of
elements.
it's design elements. Yeah, it is kind of design elements that when you are in it, not on it, as we sometimes say, you can't see them, because you're effectively colorblind, I guess, in some ways, and then people externally say, "Oh yeah, but," and because you're so used to that thing that you've been building, you don't realize what it's like to come at it for the first time. You can't. And so those kind of things have been really useful. Like say how we can improve the explore page and how we're going to make the buttons more reactive and things like that. They're quite, as I say, they seem like quite small things, but they're really important because they help.
Yeah.
You want that user experience just to flow really naturally and for people not to think about what they're doing when they're using the app, apart from focusing on the content. So, that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. It's funny how you worked so hard to launch it, and now that you've launched, this is actually when you're learning the most about how it should be. I mean, obviously you've done loads of research, but the learning that you get at this stage soon after launch is so real, it's so raw that it's incredibly valuable. And I wish your team all the very best with turning those learnings into fantastic improvements. But Neil, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you on and to discuss your journey, the journey that's led you to Mettle, the real sense of mission that you and your team feel in building something that is really filling a gap in society, an urgent and real gap, mental health support tailored for men. So to all the men listening to this, Mettle is out on the Apple and Android apps stores with a 14-day free trial, which is what I've been making use of. So go check it out. And if you value your mental fitness, don't be afraid to try it out. That's what it's there for. But other than that, Neil, anything that you want to share with whoever may be listening right now?
No, I think that's it. I think we've kind of talked about it. I mean, it's kind of, I think everybody understands where we're coming from. We just want men to kind of come, like you say, try it out, enjoy the product. There's a 14-day free trial, as you say. Try it out, see if it's for them. They might find something they really like there. Might start a new habit in their life, which leads to better outcomes all around. So it's kind of, a really exciting time. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Manu.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, Neil, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Cheers. Bye.
You too. I hope you enjoyed listening to Neil and I discuss the real and urgent need being addressed by Mettle and all the ways they've designed the app to optimize for a safe and effective place for men to develop a healthier, stronger mind. The best way for you to support the MindTech podcast is by sharing this episode with others, subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing your thoughts in a comment. If you're interested in learning a little more about your mind and how you can get the most from your most powerful resource, you can check out the Mind Explored, an email newsletter I send each week with an insight into your mind and a tool to improve it. You can access all the articles and subscribe at www.mindtechpodcast.com. Thank you for your interest in the mind and how technology can meet its needs. Until next time, goodbye.